if you make it inconvenient for people to be here, they will leave. And if they have no promise of asylum or amnesty or work permits or welfare, they will leave.
I want to talk about President Trump's executive orders that he signed over the last couple of days, particularly his executive orders on immigration. Can I just get your thoughts, particularly on the ending birthright citizenship for illegal migrants?
So in America, we have something called the 14th Amendment, which is supposed to guarantee the right to citizenship to any citizen or sovereign person born here. And there have been several Supreme Court rulings over what does it define to be a sovereign citizen in America under our laws. One over Native Americans, one over people with visas who are not citizens, but they are legally allowed to be here. We have never had a Supreme Court case over illegal immigration, though. In the 1960s, one of the Supreme Court justices put it in dictum, which is not a decision by the Supreme Court in any way, and we've used that as governing the law of the land ever since. And now we have a big issue in our country over birth tourism. Russians, Chinese, Indians, primarily Brazilians moving to America when they're 9 months pregnant, giving birth to a baby, getting citizenship. And the predominant way of getting legal citizenship in the United States is through family reunification. So once the child is born here, not only is he entitled to all the welfare privileges of the United States, but then he's allowed to sponsor his direct family members to the United States as well. It's a really big problem. And Donald Trump has promised us going back to 2018 to end birthright citizenship. So signing this executive order will lead to several lawsuits. It already has. District court judges will rule, and then it'll go to the appellate court, and then and then definitely the Supreme Court. And we'll see if the 6-3 conservative majority, how they will rule and what they will define as correctly birthright citizenship in our country.
You said that this goes back to 2018, a pledge that Trump was making. He didn't do it in his first term. Do you think the fact that he's signed this executive order shows that this is a more radical Trump than we saw in his first administration?
I think that the 4 years that Trump was out of office, a lot of people around him had time to really, really work and plan things out much better. Remember in 2016, Trump did, for instance, the quote-unquote Muslim ban, which wasn't a Muslim ban. It was a ban on terrorist-sponsored countries, including Venezuela, but it was called that. So when he issued the Muslim ban in 2017, they had to reissue it, I think, 3 or 4 times because it was so sloppily written on its first draft. People weren't prepared for the Trump administration. I think the fact that they had 4 years and many organizations and many people worked around the clock for 4 years to create an outline on what he would do on a myriad of issues, but especially immigration, allowed for a more seamless transformation once he got in office, and using executive power like the way the left does. One of the executive orders he reworked was over affirmative action hiring in the government that was created in 1966 by Lyndon Johnson. We've had it for over 60-something years, or over 50-something years, rather, and no Republican had ever overturned it before. So I think a lot of it is being a lame-duck president who can't run again and really using executive power in a way that he didn't get a chance to the first time.
Lyndon Johnson, it's interesting you mentioned him. He was an incredibly, politically intelligent and would use the full powers that he had as president. And he also started, some people argue, like Christopher Caldwell, he kind of started this woke DEI obsession with affirmative action and arguably the Civil Rights Act. Do you think that Trump represents the end of the Lyndon Johnson revolution on civil rights and on DEI?
Well, there's no overturning the Civil Rights Act in this country at this point. I think we're too past that, even if some parts of it are, meaningless because our country has changed so much. Maybe the Voting Rights Act might change. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which demands that we create majority districts across the country, might change. Is what does it mean to be a part of a majority when whites are no longer going to be the majority in the country? I think that's an open question. Certainly, when it comes to people like Lyndon Johnson in his administration, Johnson fundamentally changed our country in almost all the worst ways possible, from everything from the Great Society to reforming our immigration laws to be as horrible as they are. And I think that a number of those things will change. And really, what conservatives have been promising for the last 6 decades is a reformation on both Johnson and Roosevelt, FDR, in the 30s, on their social spending, on their political thing. And I think they've made peace with the fact that you're never going to change the Roosevelt era, but you can change a lot of the Johnson era. And Nixon had promised that in the 60s. When Nixon was elected in the late 60s, he promised, first and foremost, to the white working class that he would end affirmative action. The first thing that he did was expand it. One of the first things he did was expand it. So I think that Trump has nothing to lose at this point, and there are a number of people around him who also who have made this their lot in life, their goal in life, is to make a real fundamentally long-standing change in the United States. And yeah, I mean, it's only been day 2, so we'll see how long it goes.
Are you hopeful that Trump really does represent a break from the previous Republican presidents? I know you say it's only been 2 days, but has these 2 days filled you with hope?
No, I mean, he does. There's no question about it. I mean, there's no previous Republican president who would have picked a J.D. Vance as vice president. It wouldn't have happened. George W. Bush didn't even consider doing all this that Trump is doing right now. It's remarkably different. And we can go back to Reagan, but it's talking 40-something years ago. It was a different country, it's a different place. You're talking about a different planet. So I think that, yeah, Trump represents a difference completely. What happens both underneath Trump as far as lower level Republicans go, or post Trump after he retires, because he can only run for this last term, is a different question. I think a lot of Republicans realize his popularity among the base and are going along to get along. But who knows how they actually feel if they also believe in this fundamental transformation. I'm sure many do not, and they're just grunting and bearing because they realize how popular of a president he is among the Republican Party right now.
One of the executive orders that most worried the New York Times, if you read the New York Times today, they're incredibly upset about these executive orders, but the one that really stuck out to me in their reporting was the one targeting the Biden DOJ. Now, Trump basically said in an executive order that the Biden DOJ used lawfare against him and his allies, and any evidence of that should be passed on to the White House. Do you think that's a good sign from your perspective that Trump is going to try and hold these people accountable to what they did to him and to other Republicans, and maybe use the DOJ, for his own purposes?
Well, I mean, half of them got, I think, Biden pardons at this point, but the ones who didn't get a pardon from the previous president, look, I mean, there is a long-standing history in this country of the last 2 decades of Democratic presidents using the authority of the president, from the IRS to the FBI to the DOJ, to work against conservatives. During the 2000s, it was conservative Tea Party groups that were not allowed to have taxpayer-funded status. There are pro-lifers who are in jail right now. Obviously, the J6 people, some of whom committed violent acts, but a lot of them who didn't, who were receiving solitary confinement. It's a very uneven, unbalanced system of justice. I know there's a lot of conversations like that in your country called 2-tier systems of justice. And that's the way conservatives have felt for quite some time. So I think at any investigation that looks into are there procedures where they sit there and they weigh in political perspectives before judging whether or not someone will get prosecuted is important. And I mean, if the New York Times is upset about it, whatever. I mean, they can just sit on it and spin.
Is there anything that particularly stands out for you that you're happy with over the last couple of days? I know that the executive orders, there's been dozens of them. They focused on DEI, energy policy, immigration. Is there anything you're particularly happy about?
I'm a little concerned over the AI stuff. I don't think there's enough regulations over artificial intelligence or big tech, and I really don't know if Trump's going to get around to that or has any enthusiasm toward that. But the thing I'm most excited about is honestly the immigration thing with birthright citizenship. It is a game changer. America has not colonies, but territories all over the entire world that foreign adversaries are using to sit there and have women come at 9 months to give birth and get automatic citizenship. In the Pacific, there's the Mariette Islands where the Chinese nationals are coming by the boatloads at 9 months pregnant to give birth and get automatic citizenship. It's a huge national security issue. It's a huge issue of the question of what is it to be a country, to have your own rights as a nation. And just because you cross in at 9 months, to the day that you should be having a baby and give birth here, should not grant you the equal right to vote as somebody whose family's been here since the Civil War. And we need to close those loopholes to tighten our immigration system. There's no question about it.
In Trump's inaugural address, he talked about deporting millions and millions of illegal aliens. Do you expect that to happen? I mean, this is rhetoric at the moment. Do you think in reality this is going to take place?
So the idea, when people think of mass deportation, I don't know if you know this reference, but there was a child named Elian Gonzalez in the 90s who was a Cuban refugee, and his father in Cuba wanted him back, so Bill Clinton sent troops to his house with guns pointed at him. He was in the closet as a child. That's what people think when they think of mass deportation, but what it actually means in most cases is tightening up the laws as they are, enforcing the laws as they are, making it inconvenient for people to be here rather than just rolling out the red carpet and spending tens of thousands of dollars a year in welfare programs, and people go home on their own. Back in 2000 and I believe it was 11, there's Governor Jan Brewer of Arizona who signed a law called SB 1070, which is basically that local police could just ask people who were pulled over for their papers if they didn't look like they were legally here. And the amount of illegal aliens who left the state of Arizona was so drastic that Hispanics went from being the majority of all people having children in the state to a minority, because that's many hundreds of thousands of illegals had fled the state over a 1-year period. If you make it inconvenient for people to be here, they will leave. And if they have no promise of asylum or amnesty or work permits or welfare, they will leave. So just by tightening up the laws, enforcing them, arresting criminals, and making sure that it is not convenient for visa overstayers or anyone else to sit there and be in this country, I think millions will leave on their own. And that's what the goal is.
Are you concerned that Donald Trump is surrounded by or having meetings with people who previously MAGA would not want to associate with? Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, all these tech billionaires. Exactly. So is this a worry that he seems to be cozying up with some dodgy figures?
No, Donald Trump always likes to be popular and loved. It's just part of his character. It's just who he is. But I think the bigger question is with these tech oligarchs, there's never been more powerful men in the history of this country. I don't know about the whole world, but definitely this country. No one has been able to monopolize information, sell things, and basically change and control every which way your way of your life. If you have a phone, almost automatically your phone is hooked up to Google. 90-something% of all information stems from 2 or 3 companies, and there's very little getting away from that. A third of all satellites in space are owned by Elon Musk. Very, very, very few people in the history of the world has been as powerful as private citizens as these individuals, and there is very little to no regulation on them. There's almost none. They can't be sued, and they have infinite amounts of money. They're the world's richest people. So the fact that they are cozying up to him in order to obfuscate and prevent regulation is concerning, because I do think this industry needs to be more regulated. There's no reason why tech is as vastly unregulated as it is. It's remarkably concerning when you think of what they have as far as our privacy, our data, our information, and the ability to control the way we communicate.
Now, I mentioned the New York Times earlier. You used to be on one of the most famous liberal networks in America.
Yes.
Sorry to bring that up. But I wanted to ask, after Trump's inauguration, Elon Musk supposedly did this Roman Hitler salute, and it looks like the liberal media are already having a bit of a meltdown. What do you think is going to happen over the next 4 years from their perspective? Are they going to cover Trump in the same way as they did first time around?
This is why liberals are like, I don't know if I can say this word in BBGBM, but this is why they're because they should actually be talking about the fact that Starlink, associates from Starlink, and other Elon Musk's entities were filling up department jobs in the State Department, and Elon Musk has affiliations to the CCP. That is a genuine controversy that people across the aisle would sit there and be worried about, and instead they're worried about if an autistic guy gave an awkward salute when he was grabbing his heart. I mean, it is the clickbait mentality of how to drive a news cycle, and it is incredibly stupid, and they've never been able to fairly cover Trump because they have always chased the story of, man bites dog rather than anything that would have been critical to his base. I think that they just think that Americans are different than who they are, and no one honestly cares whether or not how awkward his salute was. When I was on CNN, it was like, they would every single solitary question started off with, so why are you evil? And there's just no way of building around that. There's no way of building trust about that. And most people in the media have an IQ that's room temperature at best. So we'll see if any of them get wise to it. But there's ways to criticize the Trump administration that I think would lend authenticity to moderate or conservative readers, but not the way that they're doing it.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the GBN America YouTube channel.